since the Philadelphia teacher was found dead in her apartment on January 26 of 2011, her family has been convinced that she was murdered. On January 26 of 2011, Ellen Greenberg was found dead in her Philadelphia apartment with 20 stab wounds. Despite this, investigators determined that the 27-year-old teacher had died by suicide. Or did she? In the years since, Greenberg's family has fought to have her cause of death changed. Not only had Greenberg been stabbed 20 times in the chest, back, and neck, but some of her wounds were absent of blood, suggesting that they'd been inflicted after her heart had already stopped beating. What's more, Greenberg had seemed like her normally bubbly self to those who knew her, and her family doesn't believe that she spent her last hours alive acting like someone who planned to take their own life. So what exactly happened to Ellen Greenberg on that January day? On January 26, 2011, a snowstorm struck the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Ellen Greenberg, a 27-year-old elementary school teacher, headed home early because of the weather. She stopped for gas around 1:30 p.m., then returned to her apartment that she shared with her fiancé, Samuel Goldberg. Goldberg went to the gym around 4:45 p.m. that afternoon, but was shocked to find their apartment door locked and latched from the inside when he returned. Frustrated at being locked out, Goldberg tried to get in touch with Greenberg. Becoming increasingly irate, he texted her 9 times with messages like, "Hello, open the door, and you better have an excuse." Because building security refused to open the door for him, according to CBS News, Goldberg forced it open. Stepping inside, he immediately saw Greenberg's lifeless body slumped against a cabinet in the kitchen with a 10-inch knife sticking out of her chest. She had been stabbed 20 times. Goldberg called 911, but it was far too late. Ellen Greenberg was dead. The investigation into her cause of death, however, was just beginning. Questions about Ellen Greenberg's death emerged from the very start. Investigators initially treated her death as a suicide, then a homicide, before eventually settling back on suicide. "I was in so much shock," Greenberg's mother Sandra told the Philadelphia Inquirer of the suicide determination. As People reports, all signs suggested that Greenberg had been alone when she died. Investigators found only Greenberg's DNA on the knife and on her clothes. She had no defensive wounds. Nothing was missing from the apartment, and building security footage didn't turn up anything suspicious. What's more, the 6th-floor apartment had been locked from the inside. It had a balcony, but there were no footprints in the fresh layer of snow. Investigators also found that Greenberg had started seeing a psychiatrist for anxiety about her career. She had been prescribed Klonopin and Ambien, both of which could cause suicidal ideations. But Greenberg's family is adamant that that's not what happened. She was brutally murdered, stabbed once, twice, 20 times, Sandra Greenberg told The Independent. That's rage. She did not do that to herself. Greenberg's family point to several facts. Greenberg had not expressed thoughts of self-harm to anyone close to her, and she had not left a suicide note. In her final hours alive, she acted like someone with a future, completing tasks like filling up her gas tank and making a fruit salad. Disturbingly, one of her wounds also seemed to have been inflicted after her heart stopped beating. According to CBS News, there was no blood in one of her neck wounds, suggesting it happened after she was already dead. There is no blood there, meaning she was dead at the time that wound was administered, Greenberg family attorney Joe Pedraza explained. Even the city's person said I would believe this is a post-mortem or after she was dead stab wound, and that's not even the last wound we know for sure because the knife was found in her chest. Pedraza added, to say this is a suicide is to say that Ellen stabbed herself twice after she was already dead. Doesn't even make any sense. Greenberg also had 11 bruises on her right arm, abdomen, and right leg, all at different stages of healing. Such bruising could be indicative that she had been physically abused in the days leading up to her death. As Dr. Joshua Greenberg, Greenberg's father, remarked to Fox News, "That's what I think the whole issue of this story is. Somebody didn't want Ellen's abuse to get out there, and that's why she's dead." That said, Ellen Greenberg had denied that any abuse took place to her psychiatrist. She seemed happy in her relationship. To this day, Ellen Greenberg's parents have continued to fight to change her cause of death. They believe the police bungled the investigation by cleaning up the crime scene too quickly, and that investigators ignored clues like the lack of blood in Greenberg's stab wounds. Our daughter did not commit suicide. We know that. She was murdered, Joshua argued. They, the courts, have blatantly said the investigation was faulty on the part of the police, on the part of the medical examiner, and on part of the district attorney. The Greenbergs want to get the manner of their daughter's death changed from suicide to either homicide or undetermined. However, in September of 2023, a Pennsylvania court ruled that the family cannot sue the city of Philadelphia over the investigation into her death, even though the court agreed that the investigation was seriously flawed. The Greenberg family's quest for justice continues as they seek answers to the unresolved questions surrounding their daughter's case. As CBS News reports, they've sued to get the surveillance video from Greenberg and Goldberg's apartment released, and they are suing the medical examiner on the grounds that they covered up a homicide. There are clearly reasons why agencies don't want us to get deeper into this case, the family attorney Pedraza stated. This is clearly a murder and should be investigated as such. Indeed, the question remains, if Ellen Greenberg didn't die by suicide, then who killed her? Some suspicion has naturally fallen on her fiancé, Sam Goldberg, who was the first at the scene. Jennifer Coffin-Daffer, a former FBI agent, is skeptical of Goldberg's description of his actions that night. He said he went down to the gym, came up later to their apartment to open the door, and it wasn't open, it was locked, so he busted it in. Only if you look at the pictures, there's not enough damage for somebody to bust in the door, she said. But Sam Goldberg has never been arrested or charged in connection with Ellen Greenberg's death. He has since gotten married and lives in New York with his wife and their 2 children. spoke with Ashton Kutcher on the phone mere minutes before her neighbor, Michael Garguilo, stabbed her 47 times inside her Hollywood home on February 21st of 2001. On the evening of February 21st, 2001, Ashton Kutcher was getting ready for a date. That night, he had plans to go out with a 22-year-old woman named Ashley Ellerin. But when he arrived at her Los Angeles home to pick her up, she didn't answer the door. Kutcher peered in the window to see if she was inside and saw what he thought was a red wine stain on the carpet. This didn't surprise him, as he'd attended a rowdy party there a few days earlier. When Ellerin failed to appear after several minutes, the young actor assumed he had been stood up. However, Ashton Kutcher later learned that it was not red wine staining on Ellerin's floor. It was blood. The next morning, Ellerin's roommate came home to find her body. She had been stabbed 47 times. Investigators later identified her killer as Michael Garguilo, also known as the Hollywood Ripper and the Boy Next Door Killer. However, Garguilo wouldn't face justice for his heinous crimes until 2019, nearly 2 decades after he brutally murdered Ashley Ellerin. Ashley Ellerin was born on July 16th of 1978. She grew up in New Jersey after her family moved from California, and although she was the new girl at her school, it did not affect her confidence. According to her childhood friend, Carolyn Murnick, who wrote the book The Hot One, a memoir of friendship, sex, and murder about Ellerin's death, Ellerin was the kind of girl who looked like she knew how to have fun. I liked Ashley right away for a million unquantifiable reasons that, looking back, I can only describe as chemistry and timing. What else was there really, she wrote. She had shiny dark hair and a round face, and she didn't rush to try to get in with the popular girls or make too much of the curiosity she aroused by being new at the school that year in the 4th grade. But while Ellerin and Murnick became fast friends in childhood, they gradually drifted apart after the Ellerins moved back to California during their sophomore year of high school. Although Murnick and Ellerin lost contact for several years, they reconnected around 2000. Ellerin was an aspiring fashion designer and worked at a local strip club, though she confessed to Murnick that on occasion there were arrangements that happened in hotels too. Murnick also heard stories that Ellerin had been partying often and trying different drugs. Murnick said it was as if they were speaking different languages, with Ellerin's being the language of youth, risk, and sexual possibility. It was around this time that Ashley Ellerin started seeing Ashton Kutcher. According to the Los Angeles Times, Kutcher later testified that he first met Ellerin at a friend's birthday party. He was dating someone else, but he introduced Ellerin to one of his friends. Neither relationship worked out though, and eventually Kutcher and Ellerin made plans to attend a post-Grammys party together. They scheduled the date for February 21st of 2001, the night Ashley Ellerin died. That fateful night, Ashton Kutcher last talked to Ellerin at 8:24 p.m. He told her that he was running late, but she assured him it was no problem because she still needed to dry her hair. once again no answer. Kutcher later testified in court. At this point, I pretty well assumed she had left for the night and that I was late and she was upset. That's when he peered in through the window and saw what he thought was a red wine stain on the carpet. I didn't really think anything of it, he said. Kutcher then left. The next morning, Ellerin's roommate, Jennifer DeSisto, returned home to find her body lying near the bathroom door. She initially believed that Ellerin was playing some kind of practical joke, so she moved closer and noticed that Ellerin was covered in so much blood that it had matted her hair and stained the carpet red. DeSisto called the police immediately, and investigators quickly determined that her death was a homicide. The question remained though, who was the killer? It took police years to track down Ashley Ellerin's murderer. In 2008, a man named Michael Garguilo was arrested after he violently attacked his neighbor, Michelle Murphy. Detectives later connected him to the deaths of Ellerin and 2 other women. The press gave Garguilo several nicknames, including the Chiller Killer and the Hollywood Ripper. However, the one that stuck was the Boy Next Door Killer because he lived near his victims, stalked them, and attacked them in their own homes. In fact, Garguilo had first met Ashley Ellerin when he spotted her trying to fix a flat tire in front of her house. He offered to help her change it and then continued to show up at her apartment to repair other objects. He came by so frequently that Ellerin's roommate came to believe he was stalking her. Still, Ellerin was the kind of woman who wanted to see the good in people. According to LA Weekly, her friends described her as an amazing person who would make friends with everyone. Detective Tom Small, who worked on Ellerin's case, noted, "Probably someone came to the door and the rest is history. She knew the guy, and according to the people who knew her, if she knew you, she would let you in." Garguilo likely decided to act when he found Ellerin home alone on the night of February 21st. Perhaps he made a move and was rejected, or maybe he simply wanted to kill. Regardless of his motive, however, Garguilo stabbed Ellerin 47 times. The wounds were so severe that she was nearly decapitated. But Garguilo had managed to get away with the murder, at least for a while. Michael Garguilo likely carried out his first murder in 1993 before going on to kill Ellerin in 2001. 4 years later, he struck again, this time stabbing his neighbor Maria Bruno to death in her home in El Monte. When her body was found, investigators noticed that her breasts had been cut off and the implants removed. Then, in 2008, Garguilo attacked Murphy in her Santa Monica apartment. She managed to fight him off and he ran away, leaving a bloody trail behind him. After years of delayed trials, Michael Garguilo was found guilty of Ashley Ellerin's murder in August of 2019 and sentenced to death, largely thanks to the testimony of none other than Ashton Kutcher. On October 17th of 2015, Sasha Samsudean safely returned home after a night out in Orlando, Florida, only to be murdered by Stephen Duxbury, the security guard in her building. In October of 2015, well-liked Orlando, Florida professional Sasha Samsudean returned to her apartment building after a night out with friends. Intoxicated and confused trying to find her apartment, Samsudean was assisted by the building's seemingly helpful 24/7 security guard. When Samsudean was found strangled in her bed a few hours later, dedicated homicide investigators followed the trail of video evidence which led directly to the building's security guard, a disturbed man named Stephen Duxbury. This is the disturbing story of Sasha Samsudean's murder. Sasha Samsudean was born in New York on July 4th of 1988. Growing up in Orlando, Florida, Samsudean went on to graduate from the University of Florida, working for a real estate company specializing in Orlando apartment rentals, 407apartments.com. The apartment company still contains a past contributor profile of Samsudean, where she is listed as a local expert, describing herself as the Cupid of apartment hunting. In 2015, Samsudean was living at Uptown Place condominiums in Orlando's downtown entertainment district, a secure and modern building with 24/7 security video cameras and digital key codes for each unit. Tragically for Samsudean, these security measures didn't prevent a horrifying threat that came from within. In the early morning hours of October 17th, 2015, Samsudean left Orlando's Attic nightclub alone, having been out with a group of friends. Despite not seeing Samsudean again that night, a friend of hers, Anthony Roper, knew he was meeting her for breakfast later that morning. Roper thought it was strange later that morning when Samsudean didn't show up for breakfast. Samsudean was an active social media user, but hadn't responded to any form of messaging or phone calls. Later that day, after their repeated calls and messages went unanswered, Roper and two other friends headed over to Samsudean's address. They grew increasingly concerned when they noticed a present sitting in her car that she was supposed to have taken to a baby shower that day. When Samsudean, who lived alone, didn't answer her door, Roper called the police requesting a welfare check that evening, according to Click Orlando. Police officers encountered a strong smell of bleach as soon as they walked in and found Samsudean dead, lying in her bed wrapped up in her comforter, partially clothed. Samsudean's shirt and bra had been ripped open, with her pants and underwear missing, yet her apartment had shown no signs of forced entry. Samsudean had been strangled, with the medical examiner confirming blunt trauma to her head and upper and lower abrasions consistent with somebody forcefully restraining her. But try as he might to completely remove evidence using bleach, a male had left traces of himself in Samsudean's apartment. For a start, the toilet seat was up. That was something I would never expect in any apartment or home where only a woman lives, William J., the prosecutor for the state's attorney office, would later say, according to Oxygen. investigators spoke with the security guard on duty that night, Stephen Duxbury. The security guard told investigators that he had interacted with Samsudean and two other women at the entrance of the building, but Samsudean didn't produce ID or a key card, so he couldn't grant her access. When another resident had arrived, Samsudean followed him inside, and Duxbury claimed to have last seen Samsudean fumbling with the security code outside her apartment. The two women who brought Samsudean home were tracked down, telling investigators they were in an Uber that night when they stopped for an intoxicated Samsudean walking along the street. Concerned for her safety, they had Samsudean get in the car and brought her back to her building. After Samsudean had gained access, the woman left, rightly assuming Samsudean should have been safe with an overnight security guard present. The man who Samsudean followed in that night was identified through the building's digital key logs, and he was cleared through a DNA swab, telling investigators that Samsudean appeared pretty drunk. An upstairs neighbor then came forward saying she had seen Samsudean in the hallway that night, and she was being followed by the security guard. When investigators reviewed the building's security footage, they observed Duxbury's suspicious behavior, which completely conflicted with his original account. The security footage from 1:46 a.m. shows Samsudean spending her last morning on Earth wandering the exterior floors and stairways of the building, both trailed and at times accompanied by her murderer. Duxbury stalks the floors and staircases close to Samsudean for almost 40 minutes, using his own key through several sealed access doors. Under the veneer of a professional security guard, Duxbury senses opportunity with an intoxicated and vulnerable Samsudean, while well aware that the building's common area hallways are not covered by surveillance cameras. At 6:36 a.m., Duxbury is captured in uniform carrying white refuse bags with red handles out of a doorway leading to the second floor garage where his car was parked, according to court documents. A minute or two later, Duxbury is seen walking back into the building without the bags, having originally told investigators he left work at 6 a.m. Garbage collection was not part of security guards' duties at Uptown Place, and the same bags were found in Samsudean's apartment. The digital and physical evidence started implicating Duxbury as investigators obtained a search warrant for his home and phone. On October 17th at around 5 a.m., technicians found that Duxbury used his smartphone's browser seeking information on how to override a Quickset Digital, exactly the type of lock on Samsudean's front door. This coincided with a 90-minute time period where Duxbury was absent from any security video or any other security-related patrol data. Duxbury's fingerprints, provided as a requirement for his employment as a security guard, matched the print on the rim of Samsudean's toilet seat and a thumbprint on her nightstand. DNA found on Samsudean's breast then came back conclusively as Duxbury's, and the soles of some boots Duxbury wore appeared to be a match for shoe prints in the apartment. Agreeing to a polygraph, Samsudean's murder were bald lies, claiming to have never entered or even been inside Samsudean's apartment. On October 30th of 2015, Stephen Duxbury was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, attempted sexual battery, and burglary. After a 6-day trial, Duxbury was found guilty of all charges on November 21st, 2017, receiving 2 life sentences without parole for the first-degree murder of Samsudean and an additional 15 years for the burglary conviction. Samsudean's parents then filed a lawsuit against the building, the security company, and the lock manufacturer. Duxbury had been hired by Vital Security in 2015, and despite passing the state-level FBI background check, was soon the subject of numerous resident complaints from Uptown Place. Chillingly, in May 2015, a young female resident had reported that Duxbury was acting sketchy after he followed her back to her apartment, reported Click Orlando. The lawsuit laid responsibility with the lack of surveillance video cameras monitoring the common area hallways. This failure created the opportunity for Duxbury to break into Samsudean's apartment while she was asleep without detection or interference.